What is up, folks? Today we are doing a lighting test for a shoot coming up where we have to prepare for the worst case scenario. We do know that we are going to be shooting a day interior shot, and we don't have the capabilities of putting anything on the outside of the buildings, so we have to utilize whatever light is coming through the large windows, and we are going to build off of that. So that's what we're looking at for our test here in this situation of building off of that natural window light for a day interior. Now, part two of this is that we don't know if we're going to have access to the location we're going to be shooting at nighttime, right? So we have to prepare for worst case scenario. This same situation with all that light pumping through the big windows, we may have to shoot day for night. We have done multiple little lighting tests and tutorials in the past of building off of natural window light. However, this one's a little bit different because one, we're not going to be able to put anything in front of the windows on the outside, such as, building flags around it or slapping sheets of ND gel on it or anything like that. The windows are very, very large and they are very, very tall. So we have to go in and utilize what we can with it. Now, when I said we're preparing for the worst case scenario, that is for the lighting test that we're doing here in our private home. Our living room has a big, large window source, right? So I'm preparing for it what if the window source is not bright enough to give us the proper key light, right? Because you have to go in one way or the other. You have to say, okay, the window light is so, because we have to build off of the window light that we're given, right? Because we're not in 100% control of the entire lighting situation because, this is low budget indie filmmaking here on the Justin Phillip Dog Times Productions channel, right? So we're going into this thinking two different ways. One, if the light coming through the window is like fairly low, meaning anything like 5.6 or under, we have to use that as our fill light. Now, if it's anything above a 5.6, then we know we're going to use that as our key light. So we're just going in with different scenario situations. Worst case scenario being we have to use it as the fill light, right? Because then you say, okay, we got to bring in more of our own lighting fixtures to pump up the key side. So that's what happened in our own tests here in our living room where we have a large window source. That light coming in there is a big, nice, soft source. But again, it was only coming in at an f4 when I took a reading with my Sekonic light meter. So f4, I'm thinking, that's not quite enough volume to be a key light for the specific look that we're after. So we know, like, okay, in this test scenario, our window light is going to be our fill. So going in, we knew, okay, that window is coming in at f4. Now we got to bring in some light and bring it up to at least the key side to at least a 5.6, right? So that's what we did. I brought in the Lowell Case Light 4, which is essentially a Kino Diva 4 bank. It is a Lowell fixture, but it does have 4 Kino Diva daylight balanced bulbs inside of it. The only difference between the Lowell Case Light 4 and the Kino Diva 4 bank is that the Kino fixture, you can dim the lights, whereas the Lowell, you can just pop each bubble on or off. So I cranked on all 4 bubbles with that Lowell case light, and then that was a little bit too punchy, so I threw on the grid and with a full stop of diffusion and brought that down to a 5.6. So now that was pretty good even. We're not going for a completely flat look, but we don't want a huge contrast ratio. But I did place the camera on the shadow side, so that helped out a little bit. So now we have the window providing our fill light at an f4, and then our own fixture providing that key light at a 5.6. Then what I wanted to do is bring in a little bit of a rim light to just bounce the subject off away from the walls. So we just brought in a Matthew C-stand, put an Aputure f7 little LED panel on there. Those things are pretty punchy even with a diffusion on it. So I was able to dial it in at 50%. I adjusted the color temperature just a tad. So when I'm checking the color temperature of the ambience with the window light combined with the Lowell case light, I was getting a 4800. So naturally, if my camera is looking at a 4800 Kelvin, that's what I'm going to dial in on the back of my Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K, 4800 Kelvin, just so all things are even across the board when we go into post, right? When it comes to background lights and kicker lights and those things, you can have more leniency with those. For instance, like you'll see here in my YouTube videos, I always have the background lights at like a tungsten, whereas my key lights here in the front are usually daylight. That's because I prefer the way people look on daylight balance bulbs, and with the backgrounds we can get a little more interesting because that light's not hitting me. It's not going to affect my skin tones or anything like that. So I have that as a tungsten along with those stupid little Christmas lights, and then I just shoot the tungsten light directly at the back wall. As you see this little skinny thing here, that's a wannabe Quasar baby tube, so it just shoots that tungsten light in the back. Anyway, so that's kind of what I did in this situation for our lighting test. I put the aperture f7 at, I think I put it a little higher actually. So if I was reading in at 4800 on camera, I just set it a little bit above, like it was around between 5,000 and 5,200. So it wasn't a huge difference, but just a little bit something different to pop down on her, to pop her away. And it was a little bit floody, so I took some Rosco black wrap and just, you know, the black wrap foil, and made myself a little snoot all the way around that f7, so then to really pop her out away from there. Now what we have is a cool little kicker light. But then looking at this in camera on the Pocket 4K, I realized that the key light was spilling too much on the key side, and I wanted to have more of a light to dark contrast ratio across my frame. So I brought in another C-stand with a big old sheet of Duvetine, otherwise known as negative fill, and clamped it across the C-stand arm and put that in there to separate what the key light was spilling onto the background. And that way it just made our subject pop a little bit more off. So now you not only have the rim light helping pop away from the background, but now you have that negative fill in there between the key light and the background, even more popping out away because it's going dark to light to dark again on the shadow side. This same situation with all that light pumping through the big windows, we may have to shoot day for night, meaning we have to pull it off that now we're in nighttime. And that is worst case scenario if we can't be allowed to go in this location at nighttime. So that's another part 2 of this test, just preparing for that, right? So naturally we kill the key light. That's the first thing we do. Get rid of that big 4-bank, get rid of that. And however, I did keep our little rim light. That's going to be our one saving grace, kind of our only light source on top of all the window stuff, right? So there's nothing we can do. We can't control the window light, right? That's still coming in at f4. Now you could do 1-2 things. You could say, well, we could drop the f-stop way down. I didn't really want to do that. I don't want to make it darker with the f-stop. Instead, what I did is I brought in a 1-stop of ND and dropped that in the matte box with the Schneider ND 0.3, which is just 1 stop. So that was just enough to crunch it down. And then I left in the rim light. But now I cranked it up a little bit because I wanted just a little something more to pop it out away. I adjusted the color temperature of it and also brought it up to about 75%. And that was just enough to pop her out away. Now the one caveat about this test shoot is because it's just such tight quarters, I can't control the geographical layout of our living room, right? So there was our one window where there was a little bit of light peeking through. Obviously, that's not gonna be the case on our location. I'm gonna make sure wherever we set up our shot, we can't see any window whatsoever if we do have to do that same exact shot day for night, right? Because that's the idea here. It's going from day and then day for night. So we're not going to be looking at any windows at all because otherwise we're never going to be able to pull off the day for night situation. Now, one little side twist of how I got even more of a day for night look is I did drop that color temperature. You know, when we were in the day look, the 4800 did not look good at all when trying to pull off day for night. So first thing I did, I dropped it all the way down to 2800, and that was super too bluey, too much blue there. So then I played around a little bit more in camera kind of testing, and then ultimately went with 3600 Kelvin. That 3600 Kelvin with almost no light and with the 1-stop of ND kind of gave it a really nice cool look. If you guys have noticed though lately in some of my videos, I have picked up a actual Sekonic light meter, and the differences between this and the Cinemeter 2 app in terms of reading light is very interesting, and we will be doing a comparison video very, very soon comparing this Sekonic light meter with the Cinemeter 2 app along with the Luxy for All Incident Lighting Dome. So look out for that comparison video in the future. If you like this video and you're looking to delve more into kind of like behind the scenes on set looks and getting into more of the lighting layouts and the scene designs, the shot designs, everything that happens after the shoot, even like not just behind the scenes, but then post-production, you know, looking at the color grading and going over the whole process, what actually worked on the day and what didn't work, that kind of stuff, you may find beneficial for you, then you can check it out over on the Dog Times Productions Patreon page. And that's where we get more of in-depth kind of looks at client work and things that I can share with you guys right away. And we hope to see some of you over there. And otherwise, you know, continue to see the lighting tests and all that kind of stuff right here on the YouTube page, along with gear reviews and everything else. So for now, I hope you found this video beneficial. Don't always trust your GPS. And for now, that is a wrap.